Hi Instagrammers, hi YouTubers, hi followers, hi subscribers, how are you? I hope you are well. So, on May 7th, 2021, the regional elections were held across Britain. They weren't necessarily regional because three countries make up Britain. They are the Principality of Wales, England and Scotland. England didn't have a national referendum, a national general election as such for a sitting government. It was all council elections and the metro mayors. But Scotland had a national poll for the Scottish Parliament, and the Senedd, the Welsh Parliament, had their elections. So what is the basic take from it? Well, you can take one word from these elections, and that is incumbent. The incumbents won in all three countries. So in Wales, the Labour Party is running in the Assembly, the Senedd. I shouldn't call it Assembly, it's the Senedd. And they won, and I think they increased their vote margin and gained a couple of seats. And they hold about 30 seats in the Senedd. In Scotland, the SNP won. They didn't get an overall majority, and the supermajority that people like Alex Salmond were talking about with his party Alba that got kind of nowhere. But in Scotland, they now have a slight majority for an independence referendum, push for an independence referendum. So the SNP can form a government, but I think they're going to go into coalition with the Greens, who picked up some seats, and in Scotland, the Greens support independence. In England, the council seats predominantly went to Tories. So in Southampton, where I live, it turned from a Labour administration into a Conservative administration. Labour lost about 5, 6, 7 seats, I think, and they turned blue. And not surprising for a city that voted to leave the European Union in the referendum by roughly 62% of the population of the city that voted. So it could have been foreseen, but Labour in the city refused to stop the cuts that the central government was imposing on them. They went ahead with the cuts. The city is higgledy-piggledy in the sense of what it looks like. Labour concentrated on the city centre, neglecting the rest of the city around it. So people decided they would shift their vote. Those that came out to vote, because that's another thing about this election, those that came out to vote decided to shift their vote mainly to the Conservatives. But the Greens did well here in Southampton. I don't know if they picked up any. I don't think they picked up any seats, but they increased their vote share. Across the country, they increased their vote share threefold. And in the Metro mayoral race, or the Bristol mayoral race, I forget which one it was now. I think it was the Bristol mayoral race. The Greens pushed Labour all the way, and Greens came in second place, and Labour had to go through for the mayoral elections through to the second vote, and they could only pick it up that way. Greens have also, I believe, forming a coalition in Sheffield Central, where them and the Liberal Democrats are coming together to form an administration, and that's gone from Labour as well. Metro mayors, Labour did fairly better. There was about 13 metro mayors up for election, and I believe Labour won roughly 10 of those seats, and the Tories picked up 3 or 4. Labour won in such metro areas as Salford and Greater Manchester, where Andy Burnham won. They won in Liverpool. They won in Bristol in the southwest, which takes in Cornwall. They won in London, but Sadiq Khan, the Labour mayor there, who was re-elected, he basically won by 5% of the vote. It was very close, much closer than people perceived it would be, expected it to be. The Tory candidate, whose name I don't want to mention because I think he was a bit of a knob, personally speaking, he really did push it and surprised the Conservatives, who didn't think there was much chance of them getting anywhere in London. Actors like Lawrence Fox, who stood in London, lost his deposit. Good, he's a twat. He's got some sick right-wing ideas, and he needs to be silenced. And he kind of, not silenced, but ignored. So yeah, it was a mixed picture, but on the whole, the picture was it was for the incumbents. Labour lost roughly 322 council seats across the whole of England. The Tories basically picked up most of those, and the Greens shared out the rest. I don't think the Liberal Democrats gained any seats, but they may have done. I think they did well in Eastleigh, but I'm not entirely sure. I should check that out. So that was the day. It was incumbents. Basically, if you were an incumbent in one of the countries of the mainland of Britain, you did well, and that's basically down, I think, to some degree to COVID. These governments have been in office in these parts of Britain, looking after people during the COVID pandemic, and on the whole, people felt that they'd done a good job. The SNP had done a good job in Scotland, Wales had done a good job, Labour had done a good job in Wales, and the Tories had done a good job in the rest of in England. What happened to Labour? Well, I'm going to do a vlog later in the next few days where I will discuss my thoughts on Labour. I don't think it's a Corbyn situation, because a lot of Labour canvassers said Corbyn didn't come up on the doorstep. Now, yes, they did do well in the Metro Mayors, and it shouldn't be taken away from Labour Party that they did well in the Metro Mayors, but they lost a seat, a by-election seat in Hartlepool. Hartlepool, since it's been formed into its present-day constituency, which was done in 1972, I believe, I think it was 1972, has always been a Labour stronghold, but it's gone blue. Why did it go blue? Well, a number of reasons. One of the clever reasons was the Tories had cut the council budget in Hartlepool that was a Labour council. They'd cut the budget to Hartlepool, and Hartlepool is one of these northern cities that has just been left to go to pot. It doesn't get much investment. It's a seaside town, and if you know anything about British seaside towns, especially in the north of England, they are not great. They're beautiful parts of the country, but they have issues. They do have issues. So the Tories had cut the budget to the Labour administration in Hartlepool like they'd done in Southampton, and people blamed the Labour administration for not investing in the city more and doing more. And so when the by-election came up, it was a natural process to shift to the Tories, because the Tories were promising investment, even though they'd cut it. But people didn't realise that. On the whole, the electorate in Britain are not politically aware or politically savvy as such. On the whole, they tend to get their news and their political ideas from mainstream media, and we all know the problems with mainstream media and the distortions that they tell and the agenda that they set. So the people, and also the other fact is, Labour kind of messed up in Hartlepool. They had an original candidate that the party, the PLP, in the parliamentary party in Hartlepool were going to vote for, but in the end, Keir Starmer in central office in the Labour Party dumped a candidate on them, and it was a Remainer candidate. And on the whole, over 70% of Hartlepool had voted to leave in the Euro referendum, in the Brexit referendum. So Hartlepool was predominantly leave, and they put a Remain candidate up. And for a lot of people who had voted Labour and shifted their vote to the Tories, they couldn't bring themselves to vote for a party that they considered was still Remain, and had parachuted somebody into the constituency who the party itself in the constituency didn't want. So it was a complete balls up from the Labour Party from start to finish. Bad optics, bad PR, everything. I mean, the interviews I saw of the parliamentary candidate for Labour in Hartlepool were just appalling. He didn't have any ideas. He didn't know what Labour's policies were. It was just dire. But what was the other point of these elections? The point is, the Labour vote didn't turn out. Or it changed to the Green Party. Or in some wards, like in Southampton, it shifted towards the TUS candidates, the Trade Union Socialist Coalition candidates. Not massively, but just enough to rob Labour of votes and seats in the council chamber. So it's also a tale of Labour voters not turning out because they didn't have anything to vote for, and that's easy to see with Labour. They are vapid. They don't have any policies. They keep saying they're going to introduce policies, but we don't know what they are, and we never hear about them. So we're waiting to get a grip of what Labour stands for. As I say, I'll do another vlog on Labour, my personal opinions, thoughts on the Labour Party as it stands at the moment, in another vlog to come. But that was my take on the elections. It's the incumbents that won it. It was a combination of the incumbents, COVID, and a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding of what Labour kind of stands for nowadays, in the sense that it's still considered to be a Remain party. It's it's wrapped up in all the issues of wokeism, although wokeism is something that was invented by the right-wing media. It's not something the left came up with. It's something the right-wing media transposed onto the left, and now it's become a sort of a political issue. But yeah, that's my take of the elections. The incumbents won. The Metro mayors went predominantly all Labour, but they didn't do well in council chambers. They lost a number of council chambers and cities. They did badly at Hartlepool, where I think they got barely 30% of the Hartlepool vote. I mean, that's bad for a city that has been staunchly Labour ever since its incarnation. That's bad. So yeah, that's my take on the elections. Combination of COVID, combination of not knowing what Labour stands for, combination of not turning out to vote in the first place, low turnout in some areas, and the incumbents winning because, again, of COVID. Okay, that's my take. Thank you, viewers, and I will see you soon. Please like, share, subscribe, and look out for my next vlogs. Thank you. Bye.